biggest challenge in delivering effective asset information for schools is not the absence of data, rather the fragmentation of information across models, documents, and systems. We therefore decided that this workstream would focus on defining what good operational handover information looks like, reconnecting BIM processes with O&M documentation, using automation and data engineering tools to audit and validate information, and creating practical guidelines that can support education clients, FM teams, and delivery teams alike. This we're looking to aim to improve information reliability, operation usability, and compliance confidence across all education estates. That's where we got to.
Good. Okay. So I'm trying to remember who's our colleague from Associated Architects. I think he's yeah, basically the lead from Associated Architects, he was going through the framework, the new framework agreement, and he identified that the new agreement doesn't include handover information, and they're saying that they'd like some help with that. So we're going to pick up on that and try and be the party, the collaborative party that can inform that. So what we've also been doing in the last few weeks is also the data engineering and AI group have been exploring ways that we can audit O&Ms and then glue the information back together again. So that's the exercise that we've produced now, a video of the steps that we're carrying through, and we're really looking for people that are interested in that. And there's a lot of people in this group, like Matt and Michael Harrison and Gordon, who have already signed up for that. Andy, I think I've sent you that as well, but that's something that we can perhaps pick up on, because if we can use this to audit the O&M documentation, that's part of the challenge I think we've got at the moment, where the information is not being it's disconnected from the sort of process. So I'll just go to what I'm planning to say to Mace on Friday, just to make sure everybody's on board with that.
Who are you talking to at Mace, George?
Say again, sorry?
Who are you talking to at Mace, Mike, if you don't mind? Don't mind asking, you know.
If I can tell you, I will tell you. I'm just trying to remember her name.
Right.
But she's the lead in Mace for that sort of thing. Of course, they've just announced this morning, haven't they, that they've split the business. Mace have split the business. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, they've basically split the construction business and the consulting business. And the consulting business is now being backed by Goldman Sachs.
All right.
Which, it's interesting, if you've got a PE company behind a consultancy, I don't know what the impact of that is going to be.
It's news to me.
Yeah, I saw it in the news this morning.
You can see that in two ways. Private enterprise getting excited about investing in consultancy and property services, but maximising profit.
Correct. Yeah, be
And
very
a
interesting.
short-term basis on a 5-year profile, that'd be quite interesting.
Yes, David Simpson. It's David. He's the architect, and he's sort of providing us with this. But what I wanted to do was to just talk about this. You've all seen this graphic before, but I think there's a slightly different perspective on it now from what we're finding, and that is that what we're delivering on schools and on other educational projects, hopefully we're delivering a model. We're also delivering CAD data, and ideally that CAD data should be coming from the model. But in all too many cases, it isn't coming from the model. It's actually coming from specialist subcontractors. So therefore, there's a disconnect between the model and the CAD outputs. We've then got some COBie data. Now the COBie data probably is coming from the model, or it could be coming from an IFC modeler like Celibri. And I'm not quite sure who's actually checking whether the CAD drawings and the COBie data are consistent with each other. Are we checking to make sure that the drawings, references on the drawings, are actually consistent with the references in the COBie? We suspect that may not be being done. Certainly the O&M information, I think we discussed that 2 weeks ago, didn't we, Andy? That's not something that the BIM teams are probably involved with. That's being collected usually by a specialist subcontractor who's not engaged in the BIM process. Would you agree with that, Andy?
There's disconnect. I'd agree with that. We're still doing a couple of them in-house at the moment. We are subcontracting them out now going forward. However, in a project at the minute, we are doing it internally still, but there is disconnect. There's still confusion. There's still not sure how you connect the COBie and BIM data all the way through to the FM guys.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And even if you're doing it in-house, I mean, I'm talking with Waits at the moment on this. Waits have got an internal business, very good internal business called SES Shepherd Engineering Services.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're good company. But they what they're doing, they're also validating. They've got an internal team that creates the O&Ms, but they're not really connected into the BIM team.
No.
Yeah. So that's something that's a weakness, I think, that we need to address, because a lot of the information that's needed for FM is actually going to be captured in the O&Ms and the health and safety file. And then I think increasingly we've got 360 photos, which is great. They're being taken, but these different data sets are all disconnected. So that means huge pressure on everybody to manually check everything. So what I think our way of doing this is to actually use tools like Mortar and ActivePlan and other common data environments to basically glue everything together. So we've got stuff that is auditable and findable, and that's where the AI comes in. I mean, I've just I've just been given access to a new project, and I'm literally just been checking it, and I can't find any information on where the fire doors are installed. And this is, a very mainstream O&M platform. I won't say who it is, but they're all reliant on the information being provided by specialist subcontractors. So what we need to do is make sure that we're defining, for example, locational information. A good point about this is spaces. The space reference that is created by the architect at the outset, I would argue, should be a permanent record that everything is tied back to. That should never change. It may change in terms of what rooms are called, and it may change, certainly after the client's taken over, they will change the names of the rooms. But the ID of that room, that space, shouldn't change. And if maybe a room is broken into two, then there should be that same ID should be retained, because a lot of the information about what gets installed in that room will always be tied back to that ID. So we shouldn't be changing things. I think we should add to, well, we may add information to say this is the reference, but it shouldn't be changed. Does anybody disagree with that?
No.
Good. That brings me to schedules. So the majority of the information, I've just been talking with an architect who's been doing schools, and literally just before this meeting, and he was basically saying how a lot of the information that's coming in isn't going to come in using COBie, because everybody's trying to do the COBie through models, and the installation contractors aren't using any modeling tools. There's a presumption that the architect or the designers will put it into their system, but nobody really wants to do that, because that, A, they're not being paid to do it, and secondly, they're taking on a liability. So what we've got to do is have practical ways of taking technical submittals and transforming them into a form that can add into the information model. Tim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Just want to sort of wind back a little bit when you said about you've got a space and then you divide it in two. So when you're in project delivery phase, then everything hangs around one version. But once you're into operational stage, then whenever some change is made, then the one version just says, oh, this is the change that's now been implemented, but you've still got access to the other one. So if you think of the hierarchy as being, the building is called facility, then once you're into operations, anything that you do is usually in the context of a project. So project just says, well, in the facility information, then this space belongs to this project, because that's the one that, you know, created it. And then if you change that space into, say, two other spaces, then it may be that you either keep the original space, or you just say that space now there are three spaces there, but there are two projects. So the latest project shows in the facility context what's there, but you've always got access to what used to be there. So, and I think that's one of the things that was sort of missing, is that, you know, you have one version of the truth, but you've got this history of anything that changed, and it's that change that's important to understanding why you've got information about everything, and then everything hangs around the project that created it. That's just something that I've come to.
Agreed. Okay, so the last bit in this are the 360 photographs, which actually are a way that can be managed. So I know this is something that we've talked about many times, but I think it's an important point to be making, so that we've got the federation of the information coming through. What I'm now going to do is just skip to where we're going with this in terms of the auditing process, the handover and auditing process. essentially, what we're looking for is to be able to take the O&M information and then automate the checking of it so that we can identify where the gaps are. And what we need are people with that sort of interest and expertise to be able to join these things together. And the way in which we're going about doing that is to have tools that will automatically check a zip file to make sure that the information that is supposed to be in there, that schedules, for example, that are supposed to be in there are actually in there. And also to be able to then to go on to the next level, and that's checking the content of each of those files. So in this case, we had, in this case, this is a project that we did within ActivePlan, going through in a methodical way, auditing the O&Ms, you know, for example, the testing and commissioning information to pick up any defects. So these defects, these things that need fixing, are then being treated. Arcadis have told me 2 weeks ago that this could be considered or is considered a digital defect, and therefore there's an opportunity to address it under defects liability. So making sure that you've got the right warranty information, for example. Tim, would you just talk about that for the moment, please? The warranty information.
Oh, the warranty, that's a big one. Basically, every single O&M that we've ever looked at does not include when the warranty starts and then how long. They generally 50% maybe say how long the warranty is for, but never when it started, which means that it's probably out of warranty. It depends what stage you're at, really. You know, did the warranty start? Because the warranty could start anytime, as soon as you purchased it, as soon as it's delivered to site, as soon as it's commissioned. I mean, we know that also the warranty periods on some products change depending upon who commissions it. So if it's commissioned by somebody who's certified by the manufacturer, such as a boiler, so these, I think Hovel was the example that we had. You can extend the 18-month warranty to 24 months. But if it's installed by, you know, if it's commissioned by somebody who's not Hovel certified, then you get the 18 months. So, you know, and we just wonder how many other things are like that as well.
So I think the point is what we're really saying, and I'm replaying this to you because as a group, and I want you to challenge me on it, because I'm planning to say this to the to Mace and the other TAs and also the DFE as something that we're giving as feedback as to what's needed by the asset teams. So we are going to be talking to the asset teams as well, but what Tim's talking about there is actually coming through from the FM people. In particular, the ones that we're dealing with most closely are Equans and Sodexo. So what? Just to build on what
George, we haven't really touched at the moment on assemblies. So particularly plant assemblies, where some of that plant equipment might have had parts changed, and so when the building's handed over. So, for example, some of the filters, say on an air handling unit, might have been changed as part of the process of handing over. So you start off with fresh filters. Because if they're using the existing filters on or the filters that originally they installed, depending upon where you are and all the other works that are going on, it's a pretty dust intensive environment. So you're not going to get the 6 months, or you're going to get 3 months, because they're going to get clogged up. So there's a whole series of things. And again, this to me sort of comes over is that if you know the component build-up, the assembly build-up, and you know, then you're asking the right questions so that you've got the right planning in place to go forward. Because when you're talking about planned preventative maintenance, you know, you started off with dirty filters, you know, you could be in real trouble. Because your maintenance is saying, well, we're not going to come back here and look at that until, you know, and whatever period it is, which may be, you know, you've just created a problem.
So I'll come on, Larry. I'll come on to you in a second. I was just going to say something in the context of what Tim said there, and that is that what we need to do is have a practical way that that people like Gordon, who's a supplier of H&V equipment, can be comfortable with what's being done. So one of the things that actually it was Bill East that first, who's the godfather of Kobe, said to me years ago, and that is it's called beneficial use. So in other words, the time that the warranty should start isn't when it's purchased. It shouldn't be when it's installed. It should be when that thing is starting to be used. And you know, for example, in lighting, lighting is often put in maybe a year, 18 months before the building's finished, and the lights are being used. So therefore, the beneficial use should kick in when they start being used. But the heating system, for example, may well not be commissioned and certainly start to be used until handover. Yeah, in which case the warranty, I'm suggesting it, Gordon, the warranty should perhaps start from when they start to use it. There's one for you.
Well, you're not telling me anything I don't know, in the sense of the warranty starts when the equipment is really delivered to site, because we've no idea when it started to be used beneficially.
If you were told that,
remember that, but we often get asked for extended warranties, because we often get asked. Well, I say often. I'd probably suggest less than 10% of the time that we supply any equipment do they actually inquire about the warranties, because actually they're not truly keeping abreast of the warranty of the contract, I don't think. And I'm talking about the mechanical subcontractor here rather than the main contractor. Unless it's detailed in the bill as an extended warranty for 24 months from practical completion, and as Andrew Simpson had said earlier on, from practical completion starting. That gestation period and the complexity of the component that is offered, I mean, if the component is a static piece of a buffer tank or a tank or a dirt separator or an air and dirt separator, and I can go on and name various things, but it's a static item. Generally, some of these pieces of equipment have got a 20-year guarantee, manufactured 20-year guarantee. There's not an awful lot can go wrong with that unless it gets blocked, and therefore it's not out of guarantee. It's back to Tim's point about the filters being blocking.
Yeah.
But how, for example, one of our monitors is a complex piece of electronic and digital data transfer. That warranty, the minute we release it from our stores and it's delivered into their custody and care, I'm sorry, that has to be warranty from the minute they get a hold of it, because, you know, it is a bit of a complex piece of equipment. Now, generally speaking, that needs to go into the pipe before the pipe's pressurized and put water fluid through it.
Yeah.
Now, that can be 2 years ahead of it being energized. But it should really be, you know, as soon as it's purchased. Generally, they're not buying stuff and leaving it in a site cabin for very long. The timiest nature of procurement would dictate that it comes onto site within a couple of weeks of them installing it and putting it together within the contract program. But practical completion can sometimes be 6 weeks. It can sometimes be 16 months.
But
And without definition of that, you know, and then elongation of warranties 9 times out of 10 comes at a cost. So unless it's in the bill or somebody's thinking about it, it never gets catered for.
So that's, I guess, what I'm saying. Could we think about this? Let's forget the way it's done at the moment, where the manufacturer is kept at arm's length from what gets installed. I mean, as you said, in many cases, you've no idea where stuff's being installed, because you may be going through a merchant.
We're a bit unique because we don't tend to go through the national merchant chain, and
No.
to some extent, some manufacturers are hooking onto this because they effectively never know where their equipment goes. And I think I mentioned it in one of the other sessions. Because of that, they're mildly getting nervous about misapplication of product. And with the UK Construction Product Association now coming into play, Building Safety Act, the onerous responsibility of distribution of the product, you now have an element of duty and care to make sure that you actually know where it's going. And more importantly, know that it's not going in the misapplication of the product, because it is our product.
I guess the point is, from a contractual point of view, what we need to consider now is that the customer is not the contractor that pays for it from you. The customer is the building owner.
I've always said that. The contractor is just a custodian of the asset for a very short period of time.
So therefore, what we should be recommending, I think, as a group, is that that engagement needs to be directly between the manufacturer or the manufacturer or the fabricator, as Tim's saying there. You've got probably assemblies as well, and the end client. What does anybody think about that? Does anybody disagree with that? Cool. Okay, Larry, you've been very patient.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I realise I'm a bit late to the party, and I've a few things came out of the Golden Thread paper that you distributed, and I'd like to know who to make the comments to. But just a couple of points that might be more relevant today. Reading through it, it struck me again what a massive amount of work it's going to be to coordinate and link all the information together. And we probably all realise that. But are we actually starting with a specification, a plan of what is required and what those documents and other items actually need to consist of, so that the whole team knows what they're actually trying to produce at the end of the day, rather than get near the end of the process and then find, well, actually they haven't done it, or they provided the wrong thing, and it all becomes a bit of a surprise. So as part of the sort of tendering process, do they actually know in terms of the final information what they've got to provide, and particularly in the format, and whether there are any links that need to be built in while they're creating it, and checklists as to say, yes, this information, dates, technical information or whatever is going to need to be included?
Well, as far as the Golden Thread is concerned, the answer to the question is no. There's nothing explicit, right?
Right.
And when we first got involved with the Golden Thread Task Force, which was 6 years ago now, the reason it was formed was because the government doesn't know what information is needed. And the regulators don't know what information's needed. They're relying on the industry supply chains to be able to define that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the legislation's broadly been written is that it's down to this responsible person. And the idea is that there will be somebody that's responsible, in largely the client organization, for determining what you've just said. Now, they don't have the expertise in many cases to be that arbiter, and it's up to them by law to employ people that are adequately competent to be able to do it. But if you've watched LinkedIn over the last few weeks, there's lots and lots of talk about what competence actually means, and how do we measure that expertise, and it's still very, very vague. And I noticed last week that the CITB, the funding for training, has been cut hugely. And a lot of the training firms that were relying on the CITB funding are in real trouble. So
just to say, it seems to me, while we've got such a good level of expertise gathered together to discuss it, should we actually be trying to make an attempt at specifying what is required, so that that can actually then be shared amongst those who are responsible? It seems a pity to sort of allow the group maybe to sort of finish without actually producing something that would be more helpful kicking it off, because it's far easier to do things from the beginning if you know what you're doing and building that price in, that cost in, than getting to the end and saying, well, we didn't price for that one.
No, absolutely. So we've already started down that track. We've got the information requirements for most of the fire safety critical items detailed in recorded in some detail. But you're absolutely right, Larry. That's what I'm trying to do with this group, because we do have people of amazing expertise in the community. What I think we need to do is just find a mechanism by which they can share that knowledge, and, to be frank, also to be able to benefit from sharing that knowledge as well. But that's really where we're going with it.
I mean, that point about the, changing the rooms, absolutely agree with that, because the number of times you get into a set of information, you then don't have the history of what was there, what were the original rooms, how were they constructed, how were they configured, and unless when you're building a model, sometimes you make certain decisions that will allow that or preclude that. If they know that when they're building the model, they need to allow for those sort of historical changes, reading the history, following the trail through, need to be built in. Sometimes it's not. So you need to know that right at the beginning, that's how it's going to be used down the road.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to move on a little bit now. I just like to just make sure that this isn't a monologue with me talking. I mean, there's been. Is anybody else on the call that has any contribution to make before I move into the next step? Anybody else? No? Okay, just put your hand up if and when you see something interesting. So the point is, what we need to do is to gather together the people that have got the expertise to do this work. So, for example, here, as I was mentioning, we had a couple of different architects working on this, and also a couple of M&E people. So we were able to pick up, which work packages needed asset schedules and which ones needed data sheets, and also, what commissioning information should have been provided and the like. And therefore, we've ended up in a situation where we were able then to produce a report that was able to go back to the main contractor and identify which of their work package contractors had not been providing them with the right information. Now, I think this is really important, not just for the clients, but it's also important for the main contractors, because a main contractor like Bowman and Kirkland, for example, you're in the middle of a situation where you're reliant on specialist subcontractors to be providing you with the information, and you've got to pass it on to the client, and you could end up getting stuck in the middle. So we think that there's lots of benefits to people to do that. So if you're interested in we're looking at this from a defect liability perspective, and we've produced some examples of how it benefits a tier 1 contractor, or how it benefits a landlord, or how it benefits a facilities manager, and everybody's got a different benefit from it, slightly different depending on their role. So if you'd like information about that, we've produced that as a report. I've sent it out to a number of people, but maybe not everybody. If you want information on, say, Andy, for example, if you want it for main contractors, if you just put main contractor in the chat, I'll send it to you. And in fact, before we finish, I'll perhaps show you the various different views that I've got. We've done one for main contractors, for data center owners, for residential landlords, for universities, etc. So there's a range of different perspectives depending on what role you're providing, but all of them relate to having the right golden thread information. So the next step in this process, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so this is effectively we're building up skills about different things. I have to think in terms of the AI terminology here. So there's a thing called skills, and you can have a lot of different skills that do different things. So one of them we've done is basically say do a Q&A check, but do it this way. Or so that's where you're coming on to the different what do they call it? The different interested parties have a different perspective. So you can have a skill that effectively is doing Q&A, but it's looking at it from different perspectives, and you just run these things and see and see, because ultimately people are going to have this way of where you let the automation go through it and throw you up things it says you need to look at, which is so nobody's, it's not just going to pass things, it's going to say this definitely does work, this I'm not sure of, and this definitely doesn't work. And that's the way, but to build up those skills, that's where you need these different viewpoints coming in, and you say, okay, so you're going to do this, what do you expect to see to be able to do that? So usually it's a maintenance issue, isn't it? Or it's either planned or reactive. That's all I wanted to say on that, George.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the document that I'm happy to share. Bear with me a second. I've just got to open it up. I mean, we're producing a lot of outputs, and obviously we need you to read them. But, I appreciate that's a lot of work. It's not as much work as creating them, though. This is the rationale behind digital defects, what the financial impact is, and also how is it defined in with insurance companies, for example. So we've got insurance companies talking to us about this as well. And then for each of the different stakeholder groups, we've produced something to say, why is this needed? How can it be delivered? And our premise is that the Golden Thread Task Force, which I see you as all being part of, we can actually look at what the benefits are of getting this information, and then looking at things from a financial perspective and a risk reduction perspective, and then what we then need to do to make this happen. So if anybody wants a copy of these, if you just put defects liability or defects liability in the chat, I'll share them with you. is coming back to where it was. So the point about the O&M audit, if we can quickly produce a report that says what's wrong, what's missing from an O&M submission, then it means that we can get some things being addressed far more quickly. We're not waiting for a year and then looking back. So what we've done, we've taken the work that our team of experts did, and we've turned it into a series of prompts. And the prompts can then generate the outputs pretty much automatically. Now, we're not saying that AI can do this on its own. It's really important. The reason we were able to do this was, oh, sorry, I've just realized I'm not sharing my screen. Not the first time. If I do that again, will somebody please tell me? Because I feel such an idiot now.
I think we've all seen the slides before, George.
No, absolutely.
Although there may be people who haven't. I feel
yes. So
it's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. So well, so the point is, what we've done, we took what we did there manually, did the report, so we know what the answer needs to be, and then we produce prompts to actually get the answer out that took us weeks of work to actually do manually. Now, what we want within the task force are people that know what the answers need to be, and obviously people that can run the technical side of things as well, because then we can say, right, these are the defects that were needed. You see there's a series of passes and fails, and we can then start to use some data engineering to fix them. So that's the sort of approach that we're trying to promote, and we're getting quite a lot of interest in that. So that's really where we want to get to. Any observations on that? Is there anybody that wants to know more about this? I mean, we've got the data engineering workshop this Thursday. I think we've got about 60 or 70 people signed up for that, haven't we, Richard?
Yep. Yeah, 64, I think.
Yeah. So if you're not already registered for that and you would like to be part of that, or at least talk about it, see where you fit in, then if you just put AI in the chat, we'll get something to you. Has anybody got any comments to make before I move on? I might pick on some people here now. Matt Cunliffe.
Hello. Not really. We need to dive into it more. Obviously, I've got my picture from the digital construction side, and this is all proving a lot of relevance with things. I say I'm trying to flip the picture now and look at it from legacy retained estate side to kind of do the reverse engineering bit. But I mean, yeah, the great questions being raised, and it's what is the answer? It's the fun bit, isn't it? So, but I can certainly see with the routes that you're looking, because we've had some good practice recently looking at some retained estates and their CAF-FM understanding of what they think on the asset picture and going through their drawings and realizing how much is wrong is mental. So making that process smoother rather than good old Mick that's on the call getting his eyes watering, looking at schematics and layouts and O&Ms and Kobe sheets constantly. That would be really useful.
Brilliant, thank you. Graham from the university's side of things. I feel that Graham runs. You're the lead on USHA, aren't you, Graham?
Yep.
Could you just explain what USHA is doing?
So there is no consistent approach. So there is no sort of USHA branded approach. Those who don't know what USHA is, that's the Universities Safety and Health Association, because we all know that this part of the sector is playing rapid catch up, and there's obviously best practice, but there isn't a definitive blueprint of what that looks like.
Yeah,
so there'll be good. So there'll be good universities who probably UCL are a good example, because they're big enough and their departments are big enough to insist on the right documentation, the right safety file, and there'll be smaller universities who are stuck in the quagmire of old buildings and still trying to generate fire strategies retrospectively, and not building new buildings. So there's almost like a blueprint for success of what a new building, a very expensive new building, looks like. But as I've said multiple times, that's the 1% of the built environment. 99% is the existing buildings, where we need to draw this back, and almost we need to pull the drawbridge up at some point, and stop what we're doing. A great example would be, I don't know, probably my university, where we've had 5 fire doors fixed. It's not a big project, but when I say, right, that really needs to go into the building safety file, we're not there yet. They haven't built the infrastructure. They concentrate on CAFM systems. Well, a CAFM system isn't the Placia. That's just recording jobs and clearing jobs. What they need is to buy a system to deposit this information that 10 years later I can go, oh, those 5 fire doors, where do we buy them from? Who installed them? Or there's a cross report that says this fire door didn't behave, they were lying, and I can quickly identify whether I've got some.
So what I think we should be doing, what was interesting about what you just said there, Graham, is that Patrick Julian from UCL, who I think you know, Patrick is the person that oversees the checking of the O&Ms, and he's inundated because UCL have got so many projects going on, and he gave us one to analyze, and we found all sorts of issues with it. Yeah, which Patrick's quite grateful for, because it's giving him something he can use. But that's something I think, maybe we should look at that from a point of view of, what would be great to do is just see if we could do something for universities. For example, maybe we use the example that Patrick did. Yes, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that sort of came about at the end of February in the AI world, is the ability to create sets of skills and workflows. And basically, I've been experimenting with that, so that it can so in UCL's example, it's a single health and safety file, which is 101,560 odd pages long. So part of the workflow was to actually deconstruct it into its basic elements and then analyze it for fitness for purpose. And so I've managed to actually train to engineer the skill so that it actually does do that and come back with the same observational things that we got. But we could go even further. And I think it's that the fact that they've got those going back to 2017 is when they first instigated that structure with the PDF, but it's a single PDF, and it's a nightmare for large projects, because these sort of crease your machine when they're several 100 megabyte files. So deconstructing it is quite a useful exercise, but also in terms of where people said they've provided product information, but it wasn't. It was actually certificates of conformity for that particular product, and showing how it was differently installed. So there was information that was the whole series of things. And I think that, George, is with this new way, is that what we should be encouraging people to experiment with a bit, because what this new stuff with the AI means is that you can set a folder on your local machine and drop stuff into it, and it can reorganize it. It can split things down. It can create folders. It can delete things. It can create spreadsheets, and it is just totally mind-blowing what you can then start to get out. So it's making order out of the chaos, really, and showing you where the holes are. So I think that's all I want to say. I mean, you should really be, I don't know whether there should be this sort of overlap of what happens in the engineering group coming back to the individual interest groups like education or health or whatever, because it applies to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a residential group tomorrow. We've got one on Thursday, on Wednesday for healthcare. And we've got people like the new hospital program engaged in that as well. So that's becoming interesting. We've only got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to do a call out for how we're looking at this from a point of view of how can we add this into task information delivery plans. So we've got with Mo from Mortar and also Franco Pitoni, what we're trying to do is to look at the various different activities that are being carried out on the golden thread. So here, for example, breaking out the activities into high-level activities, capturing information using templates, validating the information. And the principle that we're trying to get to here is if you're producing information, who's going to consume it, and is it good enough to be able to consume? Because quite often people are producing information without really thinking about how it's going to be used. They're delivering against a criteria, but possibly not recognizing that that information's then got to be utilized, and that's what we're already finding out in the O&Ms. People are producing information that can't be read. So the question I've got for everybody is, are you willing to put a little bit more effort into this? Because what we're trying to do is to say, here we've got the operational benefits of doing this. This is what's in that report that you've hopefully, if you've not had the white paper that we published last week, could you just put white paper into the chat and we'll share it with you? I mean, Richard has done a big sort of press launch over it, so hopefully you should have it. But if you don't and you would like your own copy of it, just put white paper in the chat and we'll get it to you. But the question I've got, Franco Pitoni, who's a real expert in this sort of things, what we're trying to do is to create a list of tasks that with who's responsible for them, that can then map back to these high-level activities. So if you're creating a task information delivery I've been kicked out of the meeting.
No,
you
you're back again.
froze, George, a
You
wee
froze
bit. You
for a while.
froze.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So what if you're able to, if you've got knowledge about these things and you'd like to contribute to it, then if you just put tasks in the chat, and we'll arrange for Franco to have a 15-minute chat with you, and you can contribute to something, because we think actually this is probably one of the most important things that we can do in this area, because if we can get people coordinated around what tasks need to be done, who's responsible for them, and what then happens with that information, then I think that's going to deliver something of great value that we can all share. Larry, you had your hand up.
Don't think so.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Paul.
Yeah, just briefly, I was just thinking, one of the things we see a lot in schools and universities, horrendous, in terms of environmental impact, just horrendous where they are right now. And the amount of grants that are available for them to go and start moving into things like basic things like LED lighting, where they're paying 4 or 5 times the amount of energy they should be. Should we not have in one of these categories the environmental impact of old HVAC or lighting or insulation, where the government do come up with grants and actually make sure these are in there and they're updated fairly regularly, so they can see what the environmental impact is of particularly old HVAC or lighting solutions, etc.
Yes. I mean, I would have said that that needs to be defined in several of these areas, doesn't it? It's something that the stakeholder, we need to identify who's interested in that, and then look at what information is required to satisfy it. So I would agree with you. Maybe that is something that needs to go in. There's a series of tasks there that need to go in from an environmental point of view. Is there anybody on the call who would have any knowledge of that? Any designers?
Well, I've certainly got all the data on lighting. My gut feeling is with what's going on right now with the Orange Man, that we're going to see energy prices go through the roof, and I'm wondering whether or not the Department of Environment will start pushing much harder on air pumps, etc., and grants on that. And this is where I think there may be a push for the school and university sector to actually get proper grants coming in here, and this is where we should be. It should be probably in there on what the impact's going to be on the environmental side and energy usage.
I think that's a really, really worthwhile point. But I think we've now run out of time. We'll run another one of these in 2 weeks' time. By then, we will have talked to the technical advisors. I can certainly bring that up, Paul, with the technical advisors, because that's something that I would think is in their remit. And if anybody's got any other suggestions that we can do, because as a group, I think we can be quite powerful from that point of view, because I don't think anybody else is asking the same questions that we are. Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. If you've asked for anything in the chat, we'll get it to you. Otherwise, we'll catch up. Is there anything you want to say, Richard?
No, I'm ready. I'm fine. Oh,
Good.
Just a quick reminder for anybody who hasn't already registered. It's the monthly forum next week.
Which day is that, Richard? Is it Wednesday? Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday? Jess,
Yeah.
Is it Wednesday? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. Yeah.
Good.
Wednesday, 11 o'clock.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you, Jen.
Cheers.
Take care,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
You will.